At 11:48 on a weeknight, a first-time founder sits with a laptop and a business account holding $2,300. 3 weeks earlier, the account didn't exist. The business has made one sale. $47 to a stranger who found the website through a search engine. Nobody in the founder's personal life knows about any of it. The idea didn't arrive as a single moment of clarity. It developed gradually, the way most workable ideas do, through repeated exposure to a problem that didn't have a satisfying solution. The founder noticed it, assumed someone else would address it, and eventually concluded that no one would. A 14-page Google document followed. A business name. A logo assembled in a free design tool after midnight, revised 4 times. A payment processor account. A website built without professional help. Functional but unpolished. The Stripe dashboard refreshes. The number remains $47. The business is not yet a business. It is a hypothesis. What separates this founder from the majority of people who identified the same problem is one thing. The account was opened. The hypothesis was submitted to the market for testing. The first verifiable sale to an unknown customer arrives on a Wednesday afternoon, 3 months in. $340. The buyer found the business through organic search, had no prior relationship with the founder, and made the purchase independently. The notification arrives mid-task. The founder reads it twice before setting the phone down. The following 6 months are defined by thin margins and a dual schedule. During business hours, the founder holds a separate job. Evenings and weekends belong to the business. Monthly operating costs run $900. Monthly revenue averages $1,100. The net figure is $200. Social obligations are declined regularly. The honest reason is not busyness. It is proximity to a binary outcome. Enough forward progress to justify leaving the job, or enough stagnation to justify stopping entirely. Several things become apparent during this period that are not covered in standard business literature. A significant portion of people who express support do not become customers. The first negative review, regardless of the transaction size, registers with disproportionate weight. And the difference between a business that survives its early stage and one that doesn't is less often a question of quality than of the founder's capacity to persist through the period before the numbers stabilize. The first dollar from an unknown buyer is the only meaningful market validation. Everything prior is projection. Everything after is operational. The first full-time hire joins in the business's second year. 23 years old, sourced through a freelance job board with a portfolio that demonstrates stronger design instincts than the founder's own. The monthly commitment is $1,400. Within the first week, the nature of the business changes in a way that isn't reflected on any balance sheet. A second person now has a professional and financial stake in the operation's continuity. She reported the new position to people in her life. She is planning around a first-of-month payment. The weight of that dependency is distinct from any prior pressure the founder has experienced. It is not anxiety in the traditional sense. It is the recognition that the business has become a real institution, one with obligations to people other than its creator. The founder also identifies, during this period, a gap in management capability. Not a failure of character, but an absence of training specific to directing other people's work. The assumption that employees will replicate a founder's sense of urgency and ownership is a common and costly miscalculation. An employee who performs her role competently, completes her hours, and disengages at the end of the workday is functioning exactly as expected. The founder is the only party whose financial exposure justifies after-hours preoccupation. The hire was made, in part, to transfer that burden. It takes time to accept that the transfer was successful. By the end of year 1, the team has grown to 3. Monthly payroll is $6,200. Monthly revenue is $18,000. Annual revenue has crossed $200,000 for the first time. The founder is drawing a salary of $4,000 per month. The business stops being a personal project the day it becomes responsible for someone else's financial stability. Every subsequent decision is made with that fact in the background. The crisis arrives in year 2, on a Friday afternoon. The largest client terminates the contract by email. 3 sentences. No stated reason. That client represents 34% of monthly revenue. The founder reads the message 4 times, then sets the phone face down on a counter and remains there for several minutes without moving. After accounting for payroll obligations, the business has 11 days of operating runway. Runway, the number of days a business can continue to meet its financial obligations without new revenue, is one of the least discussed metrics in entrepreneurship and one of the most consequential. At 11 days, it is not a figure that allows for strategic reflection. It demands immediate action. Over the following weekend, the founder sends 60 outreach emails while simultaneously maintaining normal operations so that employees are not alerted to the situation. 4 responses come back. 1 partial contract closes, valued at $2,800. That extends the runway to 22 days. The business survives. Not through a single decisive move, but through a compressed sequence of smaller ones that collectively prevented a cash flow collapse. In the aftermath, the founder implements 3 structural changes. Client concentration is capped so that no single account represents more than 15% of revenue. A cash reserve is established for the first time, and the internal model of stability is revised. Stability is not a permanent condition a business reaches after enough growth. It is an outcome of ongoing practices, and it requires active maintenance. Most businesses that remain operational beyond their early years have at some point come within days of failing. The crisis is not an anomaly in the business building process. It is a recurring feature of it. By year 3, monthly revenue has reached $44,000 and has held near that figure for 7 consecutive months. The team numbers 9 people. The systems are functioning. Client satisfaction metrics are consistent. The product is measurably better than it was at launch. And the founder is experiencing a form of professional dissatisfaction that is difficult to articulate to anyone outside the situation. This is a well-documented but underreported phase of business development. The plateau is not financial distress. It is a condition in which the business is generating stable revenue and operating correctly. But growth has flattened, and the work no longer produces the sense of forward movement it once did. The founder is working at the same intensity as in year 1. The monthly growth rate is approximately 3%, which an outside advisor would describe as healthy. Healthy, in this context, does not mean energizing. The founder engages a business consultant. The engagement costs $4,000 over 2 days. Several recommendations are implemented. Pricing is restructured. 2 low-margin service lines are discontinued, and 1 client is terminated. A client generating $3,400 per month whose operational demands were consuming resources in excess of that revenue. In the month the client contract ends, revenue declines slightly. In the month following, several constraints on capacity are removed, and the business begins moving again. The plateau is a signal that the current operating model has reached its ceiling. Founders who interpret it as a market ceiling, rather than an internal one, tend not to move past it. The inflection point does not announce itself. A referral from a long-standing client leads to a contract larger than any previously closed. A partnership with an adjacent business opens a new acquisition channel. A pricing adjustment made 6 months earlier begins compounding in the revenue figures. The precise cause of the change is not identifiable, and this will remain a source of professional frustration for years, because the founder will want to replicate the conditions and will never be able to isolate which variable was decisive. Revenue doubles over 11 months. The team expands from 9 employees to 22. The founder signs a commercial office lease for the first time, vacating the spare bedroom where the business was built. On the day the lease is executed, before furniture arrives, the founder walks the empty space. What that moment produces is not pride in the conventional sense. It is closer to disorientation. The gap between where the business started and where it now stands is wide enough that believing in the distance requires a conscious effort. The financial position is stronger than at any prior point. It is also, for the first time, large enough that losing it would constitute an identity disruption, not only a financial one. When the business had nothing, losing it meant returning to nothing, a survivable condition. With 22 employees, a lease, an established client base, and a market reputation, the exposure is categorically different. Growth does not eliminate risk. It changes what is at risk, and it raises the cost of imprecision in every subsequent decision. The first formal acquisition inquiry arrives in year 6, through an intermediary. The language is deliberately non-committal, standard practice in early-stage deal conversations. The offer, when it comes through, is $4.1 million. The founder reviews the term sheet with legal counsel, asks the appropriate questions, and leaves the meeting without committing to anything. The number is not rejected. The timing is not right. And the founder has enough experience by this point to understand that an opening offer from a serious acquirer is not a final figure. It is a test of the seller's composure and their knowledge of their own asset. The founder is not under pressure to sell. The business is profitable and stable. That fact changes the entire structure of the negotiation. A counteroffer is submitted. The negotiation proceeds over several weeks. The founder enters each conversation with documented financials, a clear articulation of the business's forward-looking value, and no observable urgency to close. The final agreed price is $6.8 million. The wire transfer confirms on a Thursday afternoon. There is no ceremony attached to the moment. The city outside the conference room window is operating normally. Nobody on the street has any knowledge of what just occurred. The founder checks the transfer confirmation several times on the walk to the car. Not out of disbelief exactly, but out of the kind of repetitive verification that follows events a person has spent years working toward. The exit is not a reward for having built the business. It is confirmation that what was built had value independent of the person who built it. That independence was always the objective. Achieving it does not make the transfer easy. The morning after the wire clears, the founder wakes at 7:14. The calendar has no appointments. There are no outstanding decisions that require the founder's input. For the first time in 6 years, the day is structurally empty. Coffee is made. The founder stands at the kitchen counter, the same counter where a $340 notification was read 4 years earlier, and opens a laptop out of professional reflex, then closes it. The financial outcome is resolved. The professional identity is not. This is a transition that receives little attention in standard coverage of entrepreneurship. The tax structure, the earn-out terms, the transition period with the acquirer. These are documented and prepared for. The question of what a person does with their time and sense of purpose after the business they spent 6 years building is no longer theirs. That question is not in any document. An answer doesn't form in the first week. It doesn't form in the first month. What exists in that space is time that was previously unavailable, and a body of knowledge built through 6 years of decisions made under uncertainty, some of which worked, and some of which nearly ended the business entirely. The distance between a $2,300 business account and a $6.8 million exit is not reducible to a single factor. Not timing, not a superior product, not an unusually favorable market. It is the accumulation of a decision made repeatedly across 6 years and across varying conditions to continue operating, on days when the metrics supported that decision, and on days when they didn't. In a coffee shop in a different city, a 26-year-old has a laptop open to a 14-page Google document. She has a business name she keeps revising, a logo made at 1 a.m, a Stripe account with a zero balance. She has $2,300 in a business account. She has not told anyone.